We're here to talk about call pay and how that got started here at Winchester Medical Center. And could you tell us a little bit about reflecting back on the beginning of it? Tell us a little bit about how it started and maybe your involvement in it at that time.
Sure. I was serving as vice president of our medical staff executive committee at the time that our obstetrics and gynecology department issued an ultimatum that they were going to stop providing services unless they were compensated for call. At the time, our hospital was facing all the same issues regarding call and maintaining an on-call emergency room call roster as every other hospital was. Physicians were facing the same economic pressures as physicians elsewhere. The threat from OBGYN is what triggered us looking for a local solution to subsidizing call services.
Mm-hmm. And what year was this?
2004.
2004. So basically it surfaced in 2004 and it came primarily from the obstetrics.
The letter from obstetrics is what triggered it and got us thinking, we had to really face the issue and think hard about it. And it was that summer that the initial idea for coming up with a deferred compensation for call program got its germination. It took a year and a half to get it invented and started, but that summer was the summer the idea first came to mind.
And as I guess you were vice president of the medical staff at that time, and you would have been going into the role of president of the medical staff in 2005, I guess.
That's correct. 2005, I was president of the medical staff.
And that's really when the idea of exploring alternatives for responding to those demands came about.
I spent a great deal of my time as my tenure as president of medical staff attending to meetings and developing what eventually became the deferred call compensation program.
Okay. As you were looking at alternatives, can you share with us some of the other routes that were being considered at the time? And I'm assuming you're working with the executive leadership of Winchester Medical Center as well as Valley Health.
There were many people involved, and we involved a lot of physician leaders in the development of what eventually became our deferred compensation program. It started with small groups of physicians picked from physician leaders, both on the medical staff executive committee and department chairs and so forth. We ended up having a major meeting in August of 2005 where we presented the basically finished idea to the medical staff at large. That was a very dynamic meeting. We got a lot of good ideas, a lot of feedback from that big meeting that refined what we eventually started January 1, 2006. Being president of medical staff at the time put me in a position where I could work closely with administration and medical staff leadership in developing the program that year.
What was the executive leadership at the time? Jim Woodward was the CEO of Winchester Medical Center. What was his initial thoughts, responses as you brought these issues from the medical staff to him regarding paying for call?
Mr. Woodward will still remember that his initial position on call pay was standing before our medical staff and stating categorically that he will not pay for call, period. And that was one side of the argument. The other side was we're not going to take call without pay. And we ended up in the middle. It took a year and a half to get there, but we ended up in the middle.
So his initial response probably in 2004 or
was,
early part
I
of
will not pay for call.
Not pay for call. And yet he started talking and negotiating and working with the medical staff through your leadership to come up with a solution.
He was a very good person to work with and was very cooperative, and he was instrumental in helping develop this plan as an alternative way out of the problem.
What do you think really caused the leadership, both physician leadership and executive leadership, to look at something that had never been done before, an alternative to cash, perhaps? What really prompted that, do you think?
What really prompted it was Mr. Woodward and the hospital board explained to the physicians that paying cash for call wasn't going to be an answer. It just wasn't going to be a financially responsible way for the hospital board to maintain its ER call roster. And when we saw that there was another way through it, that was something that the physician said, well, we can relent on demanding cash because we're going to get some recognition and some compensation. If the hospital will give a little bit on their side with deferred compensation for call, protecting them from the uncontrolled risks of just straight cash for call. And that was the compromise that both sides could see a way out of the problem.
Do you recall how the circumstances evolved that an outside consulting firm was selected, and maybe how you were introduced to that firm being Maxworth Consulting? Do you recall how that evolved?
That was very easy. As you know, this was the first time anybody had done it. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. Our primitive idea in 2004 was a pension plan for doctors taking call, and that was very naive and very simplistic. We brought the idea to Dan Mulholland at Horty, Springer and Mattern, because he was the fellow that we were most familiar with regard to hospital physician relations. He thought our idea had merit, and he said, the guys you need to talk to are Maxworth Consulting. And you guys are expert in financial matters and deferred compensation. Dan Mulholland knew that. I'd never heard of it.
Okay.
Neither had Mr. Woodward. We both knew what sort of idea we had. We had no experience or knowledge of how this sort of thing would work until we met you gentlemen.
So, Dr. Oliver, the generic term for the deferred compensation for ER call is trademarked as the call pay solution. At Winchester Medical Center, the term was attending faculty plan. Could you generally describe the plan and how it evolved?
The plan in general terms is deferred compensation for emergency room call. And it evolved out of that work between 2004 and 2005 into creating a mechanism, a structure within which to give physicians deferred compensation for emergency room call. And eventually ended up being what we call locally attending faculty plan, and is your call pay solution.